We are now on video number 4. I highly encourage, if you have not viewed it, go and view video 1, 2, and 3. We are taking these steps with these 5 videos to break down the Corporate Transparency Act in the very simplest way that I possibly can, for the layman to just digest it and understand what it is, if they are responsible to follow this law. If so, what is their responsibility? And if they don't follow that responsibility, what will happen? So right now, we're going to talk about when your company has to report. If you are a reporting company, when do you have to file a report, and what happens if you do not report? And again, video 2 breaks down some of the terminology that I will use. So if you don't understand it, go back and look at video 2. So we know what the Corporate Transparency Act is from video 1 and video 2. And as of January 1st, 2024, all reporting companies that are not exempt, and we talked about the 23 exempt companies in video 3. If you're not an exempt company, you had to start filing your BOI reports electronically using FinCEN. If you don't know what BOI is and you don't know what FinCEN is, go look at the video where I break down the terminology of the words. All right, so you have to start filing your BOI reports using FinCEN, which is considered a secure filing system. You do it electronically. When you go on FinCEN site, it will give you 2 options. You can file it right there electronically in the system, or you will have a PDF that you're able to download that is actually a live PDF. So you can start entering the information, you can save it, you can also submit your information using that PDF, and if anything ever changes, you can go right back and use that same PDF to make those changes and to submit it through there. You do this by going to fincen.gov. That's www.fincen.gov. Make sure you are on the right website. We know when anything rolls out, there's always these crooked people out there to just scam everything. But you go to fincen.gov and you can do those 2 steps. Again, if you created or registered your business before January 2024, you will have into January 2025 in order to report. So as of 2024, this requirement rolled out. When this requirement rolled out, there are different deadlines for reporting companies to report. If you are a reporting company that has created or registered your business before January 1st, 2024, you will have into January 2025 to file your report. If your company was created on or after January 1st, 2024, you had 90, and you still do, you have 90 calendar days after receiving notice that your company registration is effective or that it was created. You have 90 days from that time to report your information, your BOI information. If your company is going to be formed January 1st, 2025, so this doesn't apply yet, but if you're going to form your company January 1st, 2025, then from there on, you will have 30 calendar days from actual or public notice that the company's creation or registration is effective. Once that happens, you have to file your BOI. So again, let's look at those dates. If you have filed or created or registered your business before January 1, 2024, you will have until January 1, 2025 to file your report. If your company was created on or after January 1st, 2024, you will have 90 calendar days after you receive notice that the company's creation or registration is effective to file the BOI. Or if the Secretary of State or similar office provides public notice. So you receive this information, that could be one way, but also if the Secretary of State has sent out official public notice of the creation or registration, because they do send that out. But in either case, you will have 90 days that runs from whichever is the earliest of the two. You will have 90 days from that time, and then once you start, anyone who starts registering a company January 1st, 2025, then they're going to have 30 days from the creation or registration to report their BOI. Now, what will happen if you do not? If a reporting company in its BOI is not reported, it can result in civil or criminal penalties. So this is serious. This is Congress, as we talked about in video 1, enacting legislation for the reasons in which they say. Very strict obligations. With those strict obligations come very strict penalties. 2 penalties that you may face is either civil or criminal if you do not report, or if you report and you do not keep that information up to date. The civil penalties include being penalized $500 for each day that penalty continues. So say if you do not report, you are considered a reporting company, and you miss that deadline and you don't report, then that is a civil penalty of $500 each day that it is not being reported, each day that you are not in compliance. That is civil penalties. Now, criminal penalties include imprisonment for up to 2 years and or $10,000 fine. So it's not just if you don't report, if you don't update, because remember, that is also a requirement. So it's a requirement to report, but it's also a requirement to keep all the information updated. All the information that's required to be reported, it's also required to stay up to date. So if any pieces of those informations change, you need to update that information. If it's not, then you are also not in compliance, and now we're talking about criminal and civil penalties from there. What's really important to point out, because we talked about who is responsible, right? Who are beneficial owners, and we talked about in a previous video. And one of the key people that we mentioned about companies that's a beneficial owner are senior officers, right? So we don't want to get stuck in the mind that I own this company, I established this company, or this person owns it, they establish it. We talked about who the government considers beneficial owners, and senior officers is one. So we're talking about presidents, we're talking about CFOs, general counsel, COO, or anyone with a similar function to any of those. The senior officers of the reporting company may be held liable if this information is not updated with FinCEN. Then the senior officers of the company may be the individuals held liable for the civil or criminal penalties for every day that it is not in compliance. So that's really important to know when you take on these positions as senior officer, or anyone, if you become a beneficial owner in any capacity that we talked about before. As long as this information is not reported or it's willfully, not updated, then you will be responsible. Additionally, any person who willfully cause a reporting company to not be able to file or report a complete report, they also may be subjected to the criminal and civil penalties. So not just if you're a beneficial owner, but if you are a person that needs to, let's just say company applicant. We talked about a company applicant before. If you're someone who don't provide the information that's required to be reported, because a company applicant is required to be reported, then you also can be responsible for the civil or criminal penalties. And of course, we know any individual that qualifies as a beneficial owner, as an owner, whether it's 25% or higher, you need to report. So you're going to be responsible. If a reporting company did submit the beneficial ownership information and then they later realize that the information is inaccurate or if they voluntarily submit, if they realize that the information is inaccurate, but they voluntarily submit the correct information, at least within 90 days of that time when they realize it, then the criminal and civil penalties will be waived. That will not apply. There's the Corporate Transparency Act created what's called a safe harbor for individuals who voluntarily do this. They're not being reached out to, force or sent any type of communication saying that you're not in compliance, but they realize it on their own and they voluntarily update this correction within 90 days of the deadline for the original report of the Corporate Transparency Act. They will have a safe harbor from the criminal and civil penalties. That is it as far as what will happen if you do not report the information, and also that applies to when your company has to report. So it's really important to keep those dates in mind, and also even more important, keep in mind what will happen if you do not adhere to those dates, submit the information, correct information, or at all, what can happen as far as the civil and criminal penalties. You don't want to be paying $500 a day. You don't want to do jail time, and you don't want to do jail time and pay this astronomical fine as well. So make sure you know, if you are a reporting company, what needs to be reported and when it needs to be reported.